What's up, fight fans? Welcome to my channel. This is Johnny. In today's video, we're going to be going over this past weekend's fight card headlined by Seb Fundora and Chordale Booker. Guys, before I continue, I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to everybody who's been with me since day one. If you haven't already, could you do a few things for me right now? Hit subscribe. 80% of you guys who are watching my content haven't hit that button yet. Also, like this video as well as hit the bell notification button so you can be notified every time I put something out that's new. Thank you. All right, guys, we had a busy week starting here in Sydney, Australia with the Kambosos versus Wiley card, and we finished up in Las Vegas with the world title fight at 154 pounds between the champion Seb Fundora and the challenger Chordale Booker. Last week, we documented 3 of the fights on that card. It had a lot of prospects. Firstly, I want to give a shout out to Joseph Brown. I've interviewed him on the channel since he was 16. He's the teenage phenom fighting out of Mayweather, and he continues on his undefeated streak and proves his record of 5-0. But in this video, we're going to talk about the 3 fights that we featured, starting with the Elijah Garcia versus Terrell Gausha fight. Then we'll move forward with the Jesus Ramos Jr. versus Guido Schramm fight. And then finally, we'll finish on that headline main event between the champ Seb Fundora and the challenger Chordale Booker. So if you guys watch these fights, it did come with some controversy. Obviously, we're going to start with that first fight that we featured between 21-year-old rising prospect Elijah Garcia and the American Olympic veteran Terrell Gausha. Last week, this was my prediction going into this fight. When you look at the knockout artist prospect Garcia and the veteran Gausha, I was predicting that maybe this was a more 3-1 fight, 4-1 fight. 650 does seem a little bit disrespectful for Gausha, but obviously the bettors and the experts are thinking that the arsenal, the firepower, the pressure, and the stamina and the tempo of Garcia is going to be too much for the 37-year-old. This is not a 37-year-old man's sport. We know it's a young man's sport. So with that being said, here's my prediction. I expect Gausha to be tough. I expect him to give Garcia everything he can handle. I don't know how much energy Gausha is going to have in the mid to late rounds. I don't know how much excitement he still has to wanting to be a world champion, considering he's been in so many close fights at the top to become one, and he's fallen short. That does something to a guy. With Garcia, you'd have to think this kid is a fighter through and through. He lost 1 fight. You're gonna have to think his whole fight camp, he's gonna want to prove the naysayers wrong. He's gonna want to come in on weight. He's going to first want to beat the scales. He does that, that's 1 victory. And then I feel he's going to want to be his polished best against Gausha. Give him an opportunity to put a former world title contender on his resume and tell people he beat also an Olympian. I'm picking the young 21-year-old prospect. It's hard to bet against the southpaw right now with where you see that career trajectory going, the power he has in his hands. I'm picking him to win. In the comment section, now I got to admit, after this fight ended, it had a little bit of everything. We saw Gausha started off on fire, land a gorgeous straight right hand, and he set the tone right off the bat. He dropped Garcia, and throughout the fight, he was controlling the center of the ring. Now, what I'm gonna do in this fight, because we know that Garcia won a split decision, we know that there was controversy, social media erupted, screaming robbery. So, I'm not in a position to be a judge. You could watch this fight one of 2 ways. The judges obviously favored Elijah Garcia's bodywork versus Terrell Gausha's overall tempo and his overall output. Now, if you watch the fight with the sound off and you watch it from rounds 1 through 10, you obviously see why everyone's upset. To think Gausha lost this via split decision, you know, that's boxing, and this is why people were screaming robbery. Fortunately, I picked Garcia to win on a parlay money line, so my bet was still active, and I was kind of like, when I heard the announcer read split decision for Garcia, I'm like, whew, because I was sweating it. Before we continue, let's read some of those punch stats and talk a little bit about why some people don't think it was a robbery. Elijah Garcia's team obviously claims that it wasn't a robbery. He won fair and square. Here are those punch stats. All right, guys, let's talk about 2 major categories: the overall punch total and the power punch total. Power punches throughout the fight. Garcia throws 481, landing 131 at a 27% clip. Gausha throws 319, landing 135 at a 42% clip. So Gausha throws less, lands more, but the more important thing is the body shots. And this is what I was talking about when I was saying this is what the judges must have seen. Because of those total power punches, Garcia lands 103 power shots to the body versus only 7 for Gausha. So depending on what side of the fence you're standing on, you had one guy dominating the upper body headhunting, and you had another guy standing in the pocket taking shots but working the body. Now the overall total punch stats might surprise you as well. Garcia throws 738, so we knew he was going to be active, landing 154 at a 21% clip. Gausha throws 542, landing 189 at a 35% clip. So Gausha throws over 200 punches less, but lands 30 punches more, and was at a higher efficiency rate as well. But once again, the total body shots throughout the full fight, 123 for Garcia, 7 for Gausha. So depending on what fight you were looking at, it's hard to not count in the knockdown in round 1. There's a 10-8 right there. And then you saw Gausha do what he wanted to do with his footwork. You saw the damage that Garcia was taking. But at the end of the fight, when those scorecards were read out, split decision, Elijah Garcia, he continues on his journey. He has one loss, 21 years old. We'll see what's next for him. You got to put your hats off and feel for Terrell Gausha, 37 years old, loses another close decision. And unfortunately, it's kind of his legacy at this point. We'll see what happens for the 37-year-old. Moving forward, we had that co-main. Jesus Ramos Jr., 24-year-old knockout artist, very exciting prospect contender to watch out for, versus the late replacement Argentinian Guido Schramm. Last week, this was my prediction of how this fight was going to go. The chances of Ramos getting caught by a lucky punch against Schramm is a little bit more higher than the chances of Schramm taking Ramos the distance. So when I look at these fighters side by side, Ramos is going to be a little bit taller. He's going to have the longer reach. He's going to have the power advantage. He's going to have youth on his side. He has everything on his side. The momentum. This is why all the money's on his side. And like I said, I could tip my hat to Schramm. He's a brave guy. He's a very proud fighter. Fighters that come out of Argentina are the same way. It's an opportunity to get him back in the ring, and he thinks it's an opportunity to get him back in the winner's circle. I just think that Jesus Ramos Jr. is too much. I'm taking him to win. I like the $1.34 by knockout. I think he gets it done within the distance. I'm not going to predict the round, but I will throw Jesus Ramos Jr. at $1.34 by knockout on a parlay. And look, I'm not surprised. I'm no oracle. All you have to do is watch a little bit of boxing, and a lot of people thought that Ramos Jr. should have been in the main event against Seb Fundora and not Chordale Booker. And then when you add in the fact that Guido put his hand up, late replacement, and he was coming off a knockout loss, I was like, this makes sense. I see Jesus Ramos Jr. dominating this fight and winning by knockout. That's exactly what happened. It was fun early, and we talked about that. While it lasted, we knew Guido was going to come in there tough, very filled with pride. He wasn't going to take a back step, and he was going to be a perfect opportunity for Jesus Ramos Jr. to showcase his power and skill. And that's exactly what happened. 7th round knockout for Jesus Ramos Jr. He continues on his mission to seek out a world title. Hopefully, maybe what's next is maybe a world title contender fight. Who knows? I'm not a matchmaker, but like I said, he continues on his winning ways, and hopefully Guido Schramm gets a full camp next. We see him back because he has the heart and the will of any boxer, and somebody to step in on short notice against a knockout artist and to get knocked out, you just got, that's the way the cookie crumbles in boxing. Finally, we had that main event between Chordale Booker and Seb Fundora. We know Booker was a huge underdog going into this fight. Seb Fundora was supposed to win. Last week, here was my prediction. I always say, I will put that ticket in the community section so you can see it before the fight starts. I'm going to parlay it with some fights on the George Kambosos card and some of the fights on the undercard. I've been keeping you guys up to date all week. We know Kambosos is taking on Wiley, and if you haven't seen those videos, they're on the channel. But for my prediction for this fight, I'm taking Seb Fundora by knockout at $1.52. I think that he's going to be too much. I think that problem for Booker to solve is going to be too much. I just think Fundora is a better fighter. You had the reach to the equation. You had his height to the equation. You have the confidence that he has from already being a world champion. You have the age as well. I just think Booker is at the top of his game already, and I just don't think that's good enough for him to beat Seb Fundora. And once again, I'm no fortune teller. I know a little bit about boxing. When you're looking at how big of a underdog Booker was and you're thinking that Fundora was going to win, my only right prediction was Fundora's going to knock him out just based on his height, his reach, the distance, and like I said in the prediction video, I just feel Seb Fundora is better everywhere, and that's exactly what happened. Booker was never into this fight. It was never competitive. He got knocked out in the 4th round. Sebastian Fundora keeps the WBC, WBO belts. The funny thing is about this fight, you had Xander Zayas, Puerto Rican contender, come into the ring. He was kind of pressuring the mandatory status, wanting to do a face-off. They got an awkward photo, and then afterwards, Zayas went to the media kind of complaining about how Seb Fundora's sister Gabriella was controlling the narrative of not letting them do a face-off, saying that it wasn't needed, and he was saying that Zayas was deserving of the face-off, saying that the media and the boxing world wants to see that fight next. I don't know if I agree or disagree. Like I said, I'm not a matchmaker. I don't judge the fights and I don't do the scorecards. I'm just here to spread the word of boxing. I try to be as non-opinionated as possible. Do I like Zayas? Of course. Do I like Fundora? Of course. Would I watch that fight? 100%. Will it be next? Probably not. Now, I don't know what's next for Fundora. We want to see title fights. I want to see unification fights. I'd love to see Fundora versus Murtazaev. That's an exciting fight. We'll see if that happens. We know after this fight, Murtazaev tweeted, and it was a picture of him and Fundora. And I like to see that. Ever since Murtazaev knocked out Zoo, he has been more active on social media, putting his hand up. Because if you're not going to put your hand up for yourself in this sport, nobody's going to do it for you. And you don't hear many folks calling out Murtazaev. So if it was up to me, Zayas versus Fundora or Fundora versus Murtazaev as a fight fan, I'd want to see the unification bout. In the comment section below, let me know who you guys want to see. Also, we got another huge fight card this week, headlined by Brian Norman Jr. and Cuevas. This is a world title fight at 147 pounds. There's 5 fights on this card that I'm going to be documenting. We're going to do the fight analysis, the fight film study, and the predictions. But before you go, if you haven't seen the recap of the fights that took place here in Sydney a couple nights ago, headlined by Kambosos versus Wiley, stay tuned to this video because that's coming up right now.